So one thing is get yourself some bags. We like freezer bags. Get yourself a pen, mark what you're doing, get yourself some boxes, and then try and document where your parts go, because 2 or 3 months later when you put it back together, things might not necessarily look as familiar as they do right now. So we're debating about these brake lines, and I think we're going to stick with those because they're ABS, and of course you can do a delete, make it look clean, but it's kind of nice having an ABS system. And this is a 2001, so the pump is actually that smaller pump. It's not, was it like the 96 or 98?
Yeah,
big pump?
94, 97, the whole corner was pumped.
Yeah, it was a pump that looked like a lunchbox. So this is actually a small pump, so we're not doing the whole wire tuck or shaved engine bay. You know, we're gonna clean up a little bit. Some of this wiring will get tucked somewhere, but the whole making lines disappear, that's not the style that we're going for here. So those lines, I think we're gonna take them off in one chunk, try and keep those lines together, and obviously then put them all back, clean them and put them back. So I know someone's gonna comment, why don't you shave the engine bay and why don't you put RS lines in? Well, kind of want to keep the ABS, especially when you're making a little bit more power than stock. Especially when ABS works that well, it's probably a good safety concern.
Yeah,
so,
by 01 the system worked very well.
Yeah, it was a newer system, so we're going to keep that. Still plugging along, taking things out. The bumper's off, bumper support. Wiring is mostly out, headlights are out. We're working on the brake lines now. Mass cylinder's going to come off. Clutch. Okay, so when you take your axles out of here, if you put wheels and tires on it, you roll it around, there's a good chance of separating those front bearings because the axle is actually holding that together. This is something that George made a few years ago when we did the all-wheel drive project. So this is basically like a nut and bolt that goes in here so that when the wheels are back on, we can roll it around. We have to wash it, roll it to the paint shop, they're going to roll it around, and your bearings are not going to separate. So that's what that is. All right, more progress, more lines out, more taping. Once the rest of it is taped up, we're going to do a pressure wash under here, get any kind of dust or grime or grease that could be under here. And we're going to kind of do a preliminary sand, like I talked about. They're going to do the engine bay, but of course they're not going to do every little bit unless we pay them, and then it could get really expensive. So, in some of this shock tower area here, you see where it's been lowered and it's bumped up here. Let's see if we can fix that. We'll body work that in a little bit. But these filling the holes and going crazy and slicking it and making it look like a hot rod, that's not what I'm into. I did flatten this down a little bit just to see how bad it was. Once we get the rest of the paint off, I think I'll put some primer on here and let it cure and sand it, see what it looks like. But it's coming together, or it's coming apart, should I say. Alright, so there's 2 coats of paint here. The car was originally black, so this paint is actually pretty good, so this needs to be cleaned and scuffed, and that way that can be repainted. The Japanese front end, from what I'm seeing, used to be white. I see right here. And the white paint on the engine bay of most Hondas, it's almost like a single stage. It's very, very thin, it's soft. You know, you'll know that from if you ever get dirt on it, you can never get it to clean because it's almost porous. So somebody has rattle can black over the top over here, and it actually comes off pretty easy. So the white is decent. Some of this I've stripped it all the way down. There was a few holes that sort of filled, a couple of weld holes. I've knocked those down, I've sanded it, put a little bit more filler in there. I'm going to block that down a little bit, make it look decent. We'll see how it looks. If the body shop tells me it looks like crap, they'll probably redo it. I'm not a body shop guy, but I'm sure I can make it look reasonable. So the fenders we're going to leave on until we get there. We'll pull the fenders off when we take it over there. Same with the hood. The hood is just held on with one bolt on each side, but trying to transport the car and then transport these separate, you know, these are very, very flimsy, so we'll just leave them on with like 2 bolts and take them off the rest of the way when we get there. The harness on one side we've taken out completely. We still got to block some of those holes up. This harness here, it goes deep into the car, so we're just going to leave that. The battery tray is here, so what we'll do is once this is clean, we'll make a little wire that will hold that up so that they can paint around it. Obviously the rack and everything will all be pressure washed, it'll all come clean. This all needs to be the new color. I know everybody's guessing what color it's going to be, but this is going to be the color. This is going to be black, so if it's got any damage we'll take that off, sand it and repaint that. But we don't want this to be mirror finish, but we want it to look nice, you know, want it to look reasonable. When the engine's in there, it looks like a completed car. So anybody remembers the old mount hatch that we called it? Well, we're starting to get a bit of the same. This one's going to be called Mount Integra. There is more. Look at this. It's a little bit like a prairie.
Yeah.
What do we got going on back here, George? Apart from taking stuff out, what are you seeing?
Just taking out extra stuff, really.
That doesn't do anything?
No, I was just sitting back here glued to the thing. Glued to the ABS computer.
Yeah, well, I mean, you want to put separates on the ABS computer. Yeah. There's plenty of Dynamat throughout the whole car.
Yeah,
they've gone crazy with that stuff. It's everywhere. There's like 4 patches.
Do something about this too.
What's wrong with it?
I thought I like the color.
You don't like black seatbelts? That's all the rage. Everybody's running them.
It's a tad boring nowadays.
Well, I'll look around the internet, see if there's anybody that offers different colors. At least it was painted properly the first time, so they did paint it all the way around here. This is obviously the overspray. This also shows you the original color of the car was black, because that's kind of the way Honda do it. We're just going to paint from this lip over, same as here. We're going to make the whole thing go blue. We want this to match this. We want it to be all the way around. Get all this in good shape. These will come off the hatch. I'm thinking we're going to take this plastic panel off here, so when this is painted, it paints all the way under here. It's pretty time consuming, and we're trying to do some of the legwork, obviously, to offset some of the cost of the paint. Plus, if we take it off, we know it's going to be taken off, and it'll all get painted behind it. I see it's got painted black there, and there's a little bit of a different color material there. Also, I'll go over some of these extra pieces I talked to you about. I already ordered the windows because it's the only way you can get this factory mold, and it sucks because this glass is fine, but I want it perfect. So this is getting replaced. These seals here, there's a seal here, and this one is separate to this. I already talked about that in the last video. When they all come in, I'll lay them out and show you exactly what's going on with those and what is involved. So George is working his way through the interior. I am working on the engine bay, and once I get this close to where I want it, we'll take it out and give it a pressure wash. We'll see what it looks like.
Poker chips. I'm gonna try and cash out later.
Okay.
You know.
You got to go see the cage.
Yeah, I guess go
and see what they're worth.
Cash out. Well, I was pulling this door panel off and noticed that a handful of people have been in here putting stereos in, because there's a tweeter hooked up to that old crossover. There's a tweeter crossover with wires that don't go to anything. And then wiring coming from the door to there, from there back. And you can see they just tied the new speaker in to the old crossover.
So which crossover is actually active? Is any of them active?
I'm guessing they're still using this one, but then they put the Pioneer one in up here.
So
that's a Pioneer door speaker, and that's a Pioneer tweeter.
Okay, so
just like the back, I think they just left the crossover in, whoever decided to put speakers in this thing.
okay, so there's 3 wires or 3 sets of. Wait a second, where does that one go?
That one.
Oh, that one goes to one side. Okay,
yeah.
so there's like.
That's the input.
There's power in, then
Yeah.
there's like low and high or something like
exactly.
that. Okay.
There's mid-range and high.
So those speakers in the door are low speakers, right? They don't have a tweeter built in?
Yeah, that's just a mid-range speaker. So these
Okay.
are proper separates in the front door.
They're just not hooked up correctly,
but
so you
yeah,
just reuse that thing.
They put a Pioneer separate in, and then the Pioneer crossover, but then just didn't hook up the Pioneer crossover up to the actual speaker.
Does that Pioneer crossover have 2 outputs, like a low and a high?
No, this is just for the tweeter.
Okay, so that would connect basically to the back of the speaker as well, then that goes to, okay.
Yeah.
So right now, okay, so we're just dumping that big ginormous
Just
crossover.
the old stuff.
And it had that in the back too, right?
Yeah, those were in the back. But they didn't do anything in the back, so it's a Pioneer coaxial in the back.
Yeah, okay. So hooking this stuff up correctly will probably make it sound better too. Obviously nobody has put any quick release terminals on there, so...
It had them, if you look there.
Yeah, but I mean...
Pioneer give you, one's a male, one's a female, so you can't even mess it up when you hook it up.
Yeah.
So someone's cut them off, and then just butt connected it in.
Alright, so if I get you some cutters, you want to cut that out?
Yeah.
And
Wasn't expecting any cutters, but I need cutters now.
Alright.
And then I'm holding a door panel off the door.
Yeah. Alright guys, so let me tell you a little bit about the engine. A few people messaged me and wanted to get some details. Maybe you're building your own B-Series engine and wanted some, some options. So this is a combination we've used in the past, and it's good for a good all-round street car you can use on pump gas. Easy to tune, not a lot of headaches, no valve train noise to speak of. It's not finicky, it's just a normal motor you can drive. Yeah, it's kind of very close to an OEM feel. So this is a B18C, which is the GSR. The pistons are changed to high compression. GSR is typically 10-to-1 factory. This one is 11-to-1. Also, this is a different manifold. This is like the Type R style manifold. The GSR is the one that has the manifold that kind of turns down. It has the dual runner. It has the set of butterflies in. This is like the Type R style. There's a million of them on the market. They're all very, very similar. This is ported out, which means we cut the plenum, opened up the runners, made the runners a little bit bigger. The entryway, which when you see it, it almost looks like a velocity. It kind of looks like the end of a trumpet. That is opened up mainly to get more airflow in there. Also, the throttle body, it's a 70mm throttle body. The intake, you saw it was just a short ram 3-inch, nothing special. Wasn't a cold air. You know, we're kind of concerned with water in Florida. We get, a lot of spend in water. So we don't want a cold air. And my experience, power-wise, from a cold air to, this short ram over here, it's not that much to want to deal with the water. Next thing in the valve train, it has titanium retainers, skunk tube valves, and skunk tube springs. The camshafts are tuner 2s. Again, one of my favorite chems. They're not that aggressive where they're annoying to drive. Obviously, I saw it had a pretty drastic VTEC changeover, but it's still doable. You could actually tune some of that VTEC changeover out, make it a little bit smoother. And next is the headers, 4-into-1 header, 1.75-inch primaries. It's not a massive header, but the good thing about that is it does produce quite a bit of torque. And then simply a 70mm twin loop exhaust. Any exhaust is going to make power, to be honest. The twin loop is just quieter, make it sound a little bit more mellow. And then the rest of it is tuning. The factory injectors are not going to support 200 horsepower without just maxing out and more likely giving you problems. So these are S2000 injectors that are modified to work. These are AP2s that require a top hat, and then you got to space the rail up accordingly, but it's pretty much a bolt-in deal. Of course, cam gears. Cam gears is going to give you the option to dial in the cams and get the smoothest horsepower and the best torque curve. So that's it. That's pretty much the engine. Nothing special in here. There is more power to be made with more compression, more camshaft and such. Going into the head, you can make some more power, but again, we're not going for big numbers, or we wasn't with this originally. The future plans are still not quite determined, so we'll keep you up to date when we know that. Alright guys, so hopefully you're enjoying this series, and this has kind of got like 2 parts. or two reasons for making this series. One is I'm ready for another Integra. I miss my yellow Integra, and having a good tuner car is something that I just enjoy. It's a different car, obviously. It's not as fast as the NSX. People say, well, why do you want an Integra when you have an NSX? Well, they're different. It's like saying, why do you want a truck and a car? It's a different car and different feel, and they give you different feedback driving them. So this, I'm hoping, is going to be a long-term fixture in the shop. But the other reason is there's a lot of people buying all the Japanese cars and refurbishing them, building them, resto modding, so to speak. And some of this is to kind of give you ideas of what is involved and maybe give you tips and tricks of something that you can do. And also, as we get into this, I want to disclose how much this stuff costs, because there is this big misconception of, you see a car really well built, nobody seems to know how much it costs. Nobody wants to tell you how much it costs. Of course, when people want to buy it off you, they want to give you, you know, a tenth of what it's worth, and yeah, some people are okay with that, but the good builders and the good cars out there, they're going to command more money because it's got a lot more money in it, not just in parts, but material and labor. So, like a paint job. Paint job's still one of the most expensive things, and it's also the most awkward for us because it's the one thing I can't do. So that's where I don't have control of the money aspect of it, but I also don't have control of the quality. That's why I use the shop we do, because they maintain quality. But you do everything you can and you send the car off, and that's one of the biggest parts of the build. It's the first thing you see. You see a car parked, the first thing you see is the paint. You grab the door handle, it opens. If it creaks and rattles, it drops when you open it, you immediately get like a bad feeling of the car. So that's important. So I'm going to go over the cost of what it costs for the paint and the rubbers and seals. There's a few people contacted me and said, hey, what's the part number of this? I'm having a hard time finding it. So I want to show you what parts that we're replacing. I'll give you the part numbers. I'll give you the cost too. So that way you know if this is something you want to get into before you tear your car apart. Let's say if you're a daily driver and you're taking it apart, you know if it's something you want to get into and how far you actually want to get into it. So there'll be a little bit more on this on the next episode. Again, I want to give you a full disclosure, so I'm not going to hide it and tell you, well, yeah, the paint job costs $3,500, because that's not reasonable. It sounds good, but for $3,500 you're not going to get a good paint job. And then of course the rubber seals and gaskets will start adding up. A few more things have to come apart. This will be in the next episode, showing you what we did on the engine bay. Sunroof has to come out. I am going to keep the sunroof. I kind of like the idea of that. Door handles have to come off. The door handles have to be painted separate. The cars have to be painted separate. So when they go back together, there's no paint line. It doesn't have, you know, that rough edge where, you know, wax can get in, and of course you know, it's going to have a sharp edge. Windshield, it has a couple of chips, and to paint it properly, the windshield's more likely going to come out, and we'll go over the gaskets and seals. Again, I'll give you all that information, and I'll try and give you a parts list. That way, if you're doing this, you can kind of start adding parts together and building up a collection. So, again, thanks for watching. I'm John from LHT. This is Project Integra. We'll see you on the next episode.